Perfect. All right. So thanks, Jonah, for being here with me
Yeah,
today.
absolutely.
I guess to go ahead and start off, just state your name and occupation, and how long you've been in leadership.
Sure. So my name is Jonah Sloup. I am a supervisor in our IT infrastructure group, and I've been in that role for about 2 months now. A month of that was on paternity leave, but I've been under that title for about 2 months now.
Awesome. Cool. So I'll go ahead and just kind of jump into these questions, give you a chance to answer them. But the first one I wanted to start off with, just from your background, what motivated you to be a leader?
But I think there's a couple of things. So I think I've been fortunate in my career to have worked for a lot of good leaders, and I've seen the impact that they've been able to have, and certainly from the business perspective, but also just on a more personal level. Having a good manager can really increase your drive in terms of succeeding in business and your role, but it also just kind of improves day-to-day life. Having a manager that's really challenging can affect a lot more than just business. It can slow down your life in terms of enjoyment. So that was one of the reasons I was interested is trying to follow in their footsteps. And then the biggest reason really was the opportunity to have more of an impact and the opportunity to have more influence on a starting out small piece of the organization. But as an individual contributor, you can certainly impact a lot. You can be a leader, but as a formal leader, there's a lot more formalized ways to impact decisions and impact change in an organization. So that was really appealing to me, and a couple of the big factors for me to look into leadership and to get into leadership.
Okay. Do you feel like there's any skills you gained, I guess, throughout your previous career as an individual contributor that kind of translated at all
Oh
into
yeah,
leadership?
I think I think for sure. I mean, I think kind of the generic ones of communication and collaboration. Those are massive. Being able to communicate effectively with teammates, with other project leaders. We got a this is my father now. He's graciously letting me use his office. Um, being able to communicate effectively, and then collaboration, I think, is huge. Being able to collaborate with people as an individual contributor, you kind of flip when you're a supervisor or a manager, but that same spirit of teamwork and being open to suggestions is important. And I think understanding the business that you're in is important. So as an individual contributor in the weeds, you generally are going to have a pretty good knowledge of what you're actually doing day to day. So that translates into supervisor roles or management roles, because you have that base understanding of how the business works. And while I might not be doing the tasks day to day anymore, I at least have an understanding of the pressures and the challenges that an individual contributor might face on my team.
Yeah, that's a really good answer. I completely understand that. So I guess what would you say, how would you say you encourage the development of your team? Now that you're more of a leadership to the position, how would you say that you kind of motivate them to seek more or aim higher or kind of develop their career?
Yeah, so I think that's the thing that I'm hoping to, grow in as I'm in my role longer. I think the main thing I've learned so far is just having open dialogue and communication, really letting them have the opportunity to express to me interests and, goals and passions. Sometimes that's not always going to line up to business needs, so there's obviously a balance there, but having those communication channels open allows them to, express freely what they're interested in, and the best development, I think, generally is something that the individual is actually interested in. Trying to force someone to develop into an area or into a skill set that they, maybe don't have any interest in or even dislike is going to be a real challenge. So find those areas that people are naturally interested in, and then building that trust that if you tell me something you're interested in, I'm going to do my best to find areas within reason that we can expand those skills. So just I think the main thing so far that I've discovered is that open communication and really being in constant contact about big goals of what you want to do in your career, what are some immediate things that you want to learn, and just having those dialogue channels open.
Okay. I guess how often do you feel like it's necessary to like meet with each of your individual team members? Do you do like a weekly thing or like a bi-weekly check-in or what?
So since I just started with this team, I've been doing bi-weekly check-ins. I've seen different managers do different things, and it kind of depends on the nature of the work and the relationship of the team. But for me, I think 2 weeks, the weeks I've been in this role, kind of seems like a sweet spot because it's not a barrage of meetings that there's really no updates because it was only 5 days ago. But it's also not too far apart so that I might miss something. That they really want to talk about or have an issue that they wanted to address. So I usually do 2 week, excuse me, bi-weekly meetings with one-on-ones with my team members, and then bi-weekly staff meetings as well. Kind of the same idea of, I think, a weekly staff meeting. It's good to get the team together, but generally there's not enough content to justify a full meeting every week, at least in my experience. So that's how I'm doing it so far. We'll see as we
Yeah.
go along if I adjust, but I think it's a pretty good setup right now.
Yeah, sounds like it's working.
Yeah, man, it's trying.
Okay, I guess next question I want to ask is what would you say is the most difficult part of being a leader and making that transition from an individual at the company to now you're managing a group of people?
Mm. Yeah, so I think for me, it's delegating and stepping back. Um, as individual contributors, our job is to generally do the tasks, and if there's X, Y, Z needs to get done, the individual contributors are generally doing X, Y, Z. So that's been a challenge in something that just kind of takes a perspective shift of, I'm still doing some tasks, like there's still some things I do, but generally I need to rely on my team to do the day-to-day tasks. And my job is to more kind of eliminate roadblocks, let them do their job as smoothly as possible, without interruption. So that's been a real change as coming from an individual contributor of, I'm not actually, out there doing the quote unquote work. I'm kind of just helping the team get that work done. And that's been more. I knew that coming in that you had to have that shift. Like I talked to other managers about that, but it's still been trickier than I expected, just because when I get an email, my initial response is, all right, I'm going to go do this. And sometimes that's appropriate, but a lot of times I have a team member who's better suited for that sort of thing. So that's been a challenge that I certainly have a lot of room to improve on still.
Yeah. I think sometimes as individual contributors, we have that tendency to just kind of like get into the weeds of things, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like we get an email, we're like, oh my God, I have to do this, I have to do this.
Yeah,
And now that
yeah,
you're like a leader, you're like, wait, I have someone on my team that can do this for
exactly.
me.
And
And
the
I just kind
and
of,
the
yeah.
and the good thing is they're the experts. Like even if I tried to get into the weeds, like I'm not, it would take me years to get to where they're at. So it's really just best for everyone because they have that expertise and I don't. So for everyone's
Yeah.
sake, including our customer, it's better for me to get into the weeds
Okay.
too much.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. Um, So another question I wanted to ask you is, I guess, what would you say is the most effective management technique that you've experienced, or you've been told, or that you've tried to implement, throughout your career? I know a lot of people, they sometimes managers like to be down dirty in the details.
Mm-hmm.
Other managers are more, I guess, like laissez-faire, like laid back, kind of let their
Mm-hmm.
team handle it, come to me with any problems, open door policy, kind of
Mm-hmm.
things like that. In your experience, what would you say has been the most effective for you or anyone you've seen?
So for me, I think I've coming into this role, there's a lot of experience on this team. People have been here for 10, 15 years. So there's a lot of institutional knowledge that um, I have to learn some. So I've kind of gone more for the laissez-faire approach of, they've been doing this role for, like I said, 10 to 15 years maybe, and they really know the inner workings of all the systems, all the quirks. So I've been, like you said, kind of having an open door policy of, hey, if you have issues that need to be escalated, come to me. I'm not immediately trying to change processes and change the way we do things. Eventually, there's going to be things that I want to adjust and see that, or adjust and things that I see that I think we can do better. But my style as of now is just letting them continue to kind of do things as they have been, while talking to my upper management of, long term, where do we want to go? So I take that upper management goals of, XYZ, we want to change this process in general, or we want to get to this goal. And while I'm doing this kind of more relaxed, management style now, I'm really observing what they do now. I'm having them, kind of explain processes to me and not changing it now, but all of that observation goes, hand in hand with the upper management expectations. And I'm starting to kind of formulate plans of how to get to, the goal and state. But for now, I think kind of just that laissez-faire. But I've seen other managers in different situations who have, been more directive, and I think it really just depends on the situation. That can be really effective, and I've seen managers at Williams be really effective with that, specifically when there's like a high stress, curveball. So like if you have a project that wasn't expected, wasn't budgeted, wasn't planned, and it needs to be done, and there's a high risk or there's high visibility, that's when I think you have to, as a leader, be more directive. And give this, we have to do it this way because there's not time to mess around or whatever. But yeah, that's what I've tried to do. I'm sure that'll evolve over the years as I'm in this role and any other roles. So
yeah. Another question I had for you, I guess, is what conflict resolution techniques have you used, or do you currently use, or have you learned to use? I guess this could be like moments when a team member is underperforming, or there are maybe like disagreements between your team members. I guess how do you kind of try to de-escalate things or resolve the situation?
Yeah, so I think it all goes back to forming that trust and communication right off the bat. I have been fortunate not to have too many major, personnel conflicts, but there have been, little issues here and there. And I think what I've done so far is just try to open the lines of communication, get groups or individuals talking and trying to get on the same page. I think especially with how busy everyone is, there's a lot of sometimes miscommunication, and maybe one person's upset that a different team or a group has this, it's expectation that we can't fulfill, reasonably. So I think, but the other team doesn't necessarily feel like they're being unreasonable because they don't understand what we have to do, and vice versa. So I think just getting that communication and getting people, virtually or physically in the same room has been effective. Because overall, generally, from what I found, people have the same goal. They want the business to run. They want, everyone to be safe. You want to be successful. But when there's these, kind of silos of different groups not knowing what other groups do, I think that causes issues. So getting people together, having that communication, and then just being honest, I think so far has been really effective. Not beating around the bush and kind of like passively saying, hey, you need to do this or whatever. Just kind of being more direct, and that goes hand in hand with the honesty of, hey, I'm gonna, tell you what I'm seeing. If you have a different perspective, like I expect you to let me know as well, and then we'll discuss and try to come to a resolution. So that's what I've been. Haven't had too many problems so far, but that's what I've done for the few things that we've had to work through.
Nice. Yeah. No, that's very respectable. And I guess so. Last question I wanted to ask you today, before we sign off here, what does being a leader mean to you?
Being a leader means that you are steady. I think from what I've seen at Williams, leaders don't necessarily always know the question or know the answers to questions, but good leaders that I've worked for are always very steady. They're calm. They are the ones who, if there's a problem, they might not know the answer, but they're going to give that sense of, security and directiveness of like, okay, let's settle down. Let's address the problem. Let's even if they don't know the answer, let's find out who to ask. I think there's a steady sense of calm is really important, and that's not completely inclusive of what being a leader is, but I think a leader is just kind of that steady figure who maintains the team, even when things are shifting, positive or negative. They're kind of just that steady presence that keeps things moving forward, keeps people on track, keeps people safe, and it isn't too volatile. I think is what that's what I've kind of developed as my framework so far, and we'll see if that changes. But good leaders that I've been with are very steady, and they're always kind of like a rock. So that's kind of what I'm trying to get to. I still have a lot of work to get to that point because I I'm still learning all the ropes. But that's one of my views of what a leader is.
Yeah. Well, awesome.
Yeah.
That was a really good answer. I completely agree with everything you said.
Thanks, man. That's a great question. I hadn't thought of an answer to that in a while. That made me think. So that was good.
Yeah. Well, so that concludes the interview today.
Sweet,
Jonah,
dude.
really appreciate your time.
Yeah, absolutely, man.
Yeah, and thanks for helping me with this.